Hey everyone, welcome to part 29 of my no armor, no ranged weapons, no deaths and fist only playthrough of Demon Souls. I've returned here to Tunnel City, which I've already completed. All the bosses for this world have been beaten already, but I'm here to go and clean up the areas that I didn't complete when I ran through here the first time. That includes, not this fat official, already killed him before, but just getting him out of the way. But that includes going down this elevator and killing two black phantoms below here. The two black phantoms I'm talking about, they're not named NPCs, so they don't affect anything. They're just there to be tough enemies, I think. The question was, how tough? One of the reasons I didn't do Tunnel City first and left it till much later in my playthrough was because I wanted Flame Lurker to be as easy as possible, and that worked out right. But I wasn't sure about these guys. I didn't know if they'd be tough no matter when you encountered them. And I also knew it was probably going to be difficult to separate them. But with limited experience of them, I only fought them once in my first playthrough. My only strategy here was to try to lure them back to the elevator here and try to keep them separated by keeping at least one of them on the opposite side of these wooden beams. And that was about it. Apart from that, I really had no idea how this was going to go. And in the end, they turned out not to be hard at all. And the final Black Phantom, she actually had the bleed on her. Had I not done a backstab there, I'm pretty sure the bleed would have killed her in about another second or two. Now that those two Black Phantoms were gone, I could go up this tunnel and grab whatever items I could see. There's also a bunch of crystal lizards here. Not that that's helpful when you're doing a fist-only run, but yeah, good place for getting a bunch of crystal lizard materials here, which would have been helpful actually for upgrading my claws if it was possible to even kill them with my claws. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if you were to jump down and get one or two of them on a slopey part of the environment, it might be possible to get the large sharp stone shards you need for upgrading claws here, but I don't know. I never tried. I was well and truly over not being able to kill crystal lizards by this point. Although that said, when I was doing this run, I had no idea that they could drop the resources I needed for my claws to be upgraded. Had I known that, I probably would have given it a go. I don't know. Almost certainly would have, actually, I think. But I didn't know, so I didn't. Yep. I wasn't sure where this tunnel went to. When I was playing, I had a suspicion that this led to the area I'd been blocked off from by those 3 rockworms in a previous part. If you've been watching the playthrough, when I was doing the Tunnel City, I got blocked off from accessing an area because 3 rockworms came up and they were just in this loop of spewing out lava that I thought would insta-kill me if I tried to get past them. So I decided I would try to double back at a later point to get what I needed that they were blocking me off from. And I had a suspicion this tunnel led there, but this is me stumbling around trying to work out whether it did or not, or whether my memory was failing me. And then I spotted this side tunnel, which somehow I had missed before, and I thought, yeah, this is the way. And then, surprise. And thankfully, that barely hurt me. I was like, really? Every single parry missed, and this lone, slow, pick-wielding miner almost killed me? Come on, man. Imagine coming all this way and then dying to a miner. That would be embarrassing, devastating, and I guess hilarious all at the same time. Anyway, this is the area that I couldn't get to when the 3 rockworms came up and prevented me from being able to get up to this area. So yeah, I was in the right spot. One thing though is I was only here for the items. I really didn't want to have to waste time trying to kill these bear bugs, even the mini ones. The mini ones don't take as long as the giant ones, but yeah, either way, I really didn't want to have to fight them, but I did have to get past this one. There's an item behind him that I knew was there. Didn't know what the item was, didn't care, just wanted to get it. And I knew that I somehow had to get past him, and the only way really, apart from spending 10 minutes trying to kill him, was for him to leap over me. And he did that, so I was able to get it. Well, technically he leaped onto me, but you know, same thing. Didn't take off much health, and yeah, I wasn't really concerned about dodging him or anything. I knew I couldn't get too hurt there. I was just really happy that I didn't have to spend 10 minutes slowly chipping away at its health to get behind it. And also happy that that was the end of the tunnel city, as much of it that I could do. Anyway, there were still items out in the lava below where the tunnels are, but the risk of dying without having any armor protection or any water spell protection was a little too high for a no death run, so yeah. Those items were going to stay right there. Now, it was time to head towards the Penetrator boss. I did have some souls though. I just wanted to see if I could go back and maybe level up a bit or repair some gear. Maybe speak to a couple of the NPCs in the NEXUS that I hadn't spoken to yet. Basically just clean up a couple of the loose ends there that I needed to do. Well, didn't need to do, but just wanted to do. And then go and kill the Penetrator.
I can forge weapons.
This is a moment of frustration where I worked out that I had the large sharpstone shards that I needed, but not the sharpstone shards themselves. I could have upgraded my claws, possibly to +10 had I been paying more attention, because I would have worked out pretty quickly how to get the shards I needed, but I hadn't been paying attention, so yeah, I lucked out and ended up stuck with +7 claws for the rest of my playthrough. I didn't want to go back and farm. I think by this point I did know where to get what I needed, but yeah, I'd kind of said to myself at the start of this I wasn't going to farm, and that got reinforced when I farmed for the Iron Knuckles and failed to get them. I wished I'd never done that. I'd never do that again in another run, and after not getting the Iron Knuckles, I was resolved to not go and farm for any materials at all. And technically it wouldn't have been farming because I knew I could have just gone and bought them, but I really didn't want to go back to Tunnel City and make my way down to the Filthy Man to buy them. I was just going to work with +7 claws and leave it at that.
My thirst, on the contrary.
These NPCs had nothing to offer me either. I'm not using any magic in this run. I was just talking to them for the sake of talking to them. One part of this challenge that I set myself was to complete as much as possible. That didn't really, in my mind, include upgrading boss weapons, but I guess I could have done that. I guess I could have kept the souls from bosses, and I could have learnt all the magic spells and upgraded boss weapons, and as far as I could have with whatever resources I had, just for completionist reasons. But I really didn't set that as a goal, and I actually wanted to use all the boss souls for leveling up my character, since I was going to be lacking in so many other areas anyway. But I guess in another run, if you really wanted to complete as much of the game as possible, that would be something to do, even if you weren't going to use the magic spells at all. Alright, so here I'm at the inner ward. I've already completed the inner ward. I completed that in a previous part earlier in my run. So now I was working my way to the main plaza area, which is just before the Penetrator boss. There's a bunch of enemies there. I wasn't going to run past them. All the enemies in the main plaza area had to be killed. I didn't need to kill all the enemies in the inner ward again. I'd already done that, but I did want to complete this by killing all of the enemies between here and the Penetrator. So yeah, my rule was I had to fight everyone here. I couldn't run past them to the Penetrator, even though I could have done that if I wanted to. I just didn't allow myself to. There were a couple of items around here, and I think I could see one up there as well, up on the top ledge, so I knew I had to double back and go up top to get some of the items that I'd already missed. But apart from that, there weren't too many items here, just mainly enemies to kill. And it was a bunch of enemies too, lots of them, including a number of red-eyed knights up top. My plan was to draw the knights out one by one, and if they all tracked onto me at the same time, then just to try to run away and separate them. I was pretty sure I'd be able to get them one-on-one. Just a few parries there. The thing is, some enemies in Demon Souls are really easy to parry. Others, I don't know, not so much. Maybe just with more play and more practice, they'll all be easy. That's what I'm hoping, at least. Especially with spear guys. I'm yet to parry a spear. But I know they can be... Well, I believe they can be parried. I've never seen it done, but I'm pretty sure they can be parried. Nearly every enemy can be parried. I don't see why spear guys would be any different. I just find the timing on their spear parry to be very difficult to work out. Alright, so all of these red-eye knights did track onto me, which I kind of thought they might. But also, as expected, easy to lure them down one by one after that. One thing's for sure, I was not going to practice parrying a spear wielded by a red-eyed knight. Although I probably had plenty of health to tank that, I probably could have. Yeah, wasn't something I wanted to do. Not after coming this far without dying. do love the sounds these guys make. They sound so menacing and so angry. Alright, with him dead, the path to the Penetrator was clear, but I wanted to double back and just collect some of those items that I'd seen earlier, just so I knew that I'd cleared this area properly. While I do that, I should point out to anybody who's just joined the playthrough here that in a previous part, I rescued an NPC named Bjor. Bjor is an NPC that if you rescue him from a jail cell near the inner ward here, he'll turn up during the Penetrator boss fight and help you fight the boss. I had imagined fighting the Penetrator would be a bit of a nightmare with fists. The Penetrator's quite an aggressive boss. He has quite a long reach, which I thought might be a real problem with fists. When using fists, every second strike tends to not connect when fighting bosses and certain enemies, and I was concerned that that might be the case with the Penetrator 2. And if it was, it would mean that either I had to get in and do really small amounts of chip damage over a long period of time, or I might have to put myself at greater risk by staying in the pocket with him just to be able to put damage on him in any reasonable amount of time. Neither of those options sounded terribly good to me. I didn't want a long drawn out fight, and I didn't want a high risk of getting my first death and the end of my playthrough on this boss. So even though I rescued Bjor as part of completing as much of the game as possible, I also rescued him because I really wanted his help in this boss fight. But here's the thing, I also knew Bjor could get killed by the Penetrator pretty quickly. So I wanted to make sure that the Penetrator's focus was on me and not on Bjor. Otherwise, if Bjor got killed early, then I would be back to square one and still potentially have a very long boss fight. That's why I didn't do this boss after completing the inner ward. I wanted to have my vitality as high as possible because I was pretty sure as long as I was trying to take all of the damage instead of letting Bjor have any of it, I was going to be taking a lot of damage in this fight. But the idea was as long as I could tank that damage, then maybe Bjor could kill the Penetrator faster than I could. Okay, so let's see how that strategy played out. As soon as I saw my health get that low from that strike, I knew I had to have full health every time I engaged the Penetrator. So that made it a little bit more difficult, especially after I saw him do the same move just then to Bjor. I thought he can kill Bjor very quickly, so I've got to be very careful, but I've got to make sure if he does that flaming sword move again, that one, it's got to be on me and not on Bjor. And some of my fists had already gone straight through him just like I thought they would, so I knew the strategy I was employing here was absolutely the best strategy for beating him fast when doing a fist-only run. It's so funny because every time he did that to me, I felt like it was a success and not a failure. So yep, that worked out perfectly. Bjor did most of the heavy lifting, I tanked most of the damage, and yeah, that couldn't have gone any better really. And now that the Penetrator was beaten, every single world in the game was at pure white world tendency. From the very start, it had been my plan to go and complete all the pure white world tendency events that I could, one after the other in a row before fighting the final boss. So now is the time for me to think about how I was going to do that. I had a basic idea at this stage, but this is the moment during my playthrough where I was really thinking it all through thoroughly to work out whether there was an efficient path or whether it didn't matter, and whether or not there was anything I had to do before I did anything else, just in case failing to do so would screw things up. But of course I was trying to do it all from memory, and I'd only played the game through fully once, which meant my memory of all the pure white world tendency events came from that, and how my memory had been jogged as I'd worked through every area in this playthrough. I was pretty sure I knew most of them. There might even now be some that I missed after the fact, but I was pretty sure I knew most of them. However, at this particular time, I wasn't 100% sure of the correct order of things. So what I decided at this point was I wouldn't be able to go wrong if I specifically went to collect items that I knew were needed for an event later. So, oh yeah, you can see there, all the worlds are pure white world tendency. That's when I was double checking that they were. I mean, I had been sure they were, but the thought occurred to me that maybe the Boletaria world wouldn't be pure white until I killed old King Alant. So yeah, I just double checked before running off to do the rest of these tasks. And of those tasks, I thought the easiest and safest one to start with was to go and collect the magic sword called Makoto. That's a sword that you have to give to an NPC at Island's Edge, or an NPC at Island's Edge wants that sword, I should say. And I knew I couldn't screw up any pure white world tendency event just by collecting the sword, but I knew because the world was pure white tendency that sword should be just on the ground for me, so I should only have to run and pick it up. I shouldn't have to fight any enemies. So that was where I intended to go first to start this whole pure white world tendency event challenge off. Oh yeah, that's right. Before I made the decision to go and get the Makoto sword, I thought I would go to see Skirva the Wanderer in the Tunnel City. I didn't know his name, I just knew there was an NPC in the Tunnel City, and he actually wants to see the Dragon Bone Smasher, which I had in storage. So that's why I went to the Tunnel City. Then I realized I didn't have the Dragon Bone Smasher, so I came back to get it. And then I went back to the Tunnel City, and I remember standing here and thinking I couldn't actually quite remember where he was, and I had a basic idea, but I thought he's either right at the end of this tunnel or he's somewhere else, maybe near the crystal lizards. And I thought, all right, I'll try and remember whilst I go and get the Makoto sword. Yeah, I remember this now because my plan had been to do Skirva the Wanderer first, and he only appears in Tunnel City during pure white world tendency, in body form at least, and he drops the Ronin's ring if you kill him, but obviously I wasn't going to be able to kill him because I needed to keep everything at pure white world tendency, because that's how I wanted my game to end. I wanted all worlds to be pure white at the very end, as well as now to do these events. So yeah, so here I am going to get the Makoto sword because I knew that would just be sitting on the ground. And then my plan was to go back to the Nexus to show Skirva the Dragon Bone Smasher later. And I wanted to do it in one run, so yeah, that's why I made sure I had it on my person when I was doing this. Alright, that's the item that was on top of these rocks earlier in the playthrough that I said I couldn't remember what that did or how to get it, but as I thought about it while I was playing, I remembered that in my first playthrough, when you get to pure white world tendency, it just falls off the rocks and you can just pick it up. So now that I had the Makoto sword, I could have gone straight to Island's Edge, but I knew the NPC there was aggressive once you gave him the sword, but I wanted to knock off all the non-aggressive NPC pure white world tendency events first. So for that, I went back to the Tunnel City because I was sure I could remember where to go. But I'll continue that on in part 30. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.